have you been?
Mrs. Newcomb invited me to stay to supper. And I'll bet you haven't had a thing to eat. All right, let's go get you some.
I don't want anything.
Hey, come on, partner. Quit worrying.
How did Mrs. Barkley take the news?
First some supper, then we'll talk.
We'll talk now.
Well, she took it about as I expected. She wants to see Jim naturally. But she won't. There just won't be enough time before she and Audrey have to catch the morning stage. Morley will see to it.
Are you sure? Suppose he can't.
Oh, Dad.
I know Victoria Barkley, Eric.
So do I.
She's no fool.
Far from it.
If she ever suspects...
She won't.
I can't let you do this for me, Eric. This is my problem.
Dad. Come here. Dad, one of the first things I ever remember you telling me when I was a boy is that I would never have a problem that wasn't our problem. Yours and mine. And that's the way it's always been.
Eric.
And this time it's my turn, Dad.
I want to tell the truth.
But you'd be ruined. Dad, don't you understand? Everything you've worked for your whole life would end up nothing. I'm not going to let that happen to you, Dad. I'll never let that happen to you. Now let's go home, huh?
Oh,
Oh, Miss Barkley, I didn't mean to frighten you. I just got back from town, saw the barn doors open, thought it might be a prowler.
well, it was so warm I couldn't sleep. I came out for a breath of fresh air.
Pretty warm night, all right. I'm sure glad you and Miss Audra came. Might help Mr. Jim, you and your family being his only living relatives.
Eric and the doctor don't seem to think so. They believe he's beyond help.
It could be. Pretty bad with him. I guess maybe Mr. Eric or Grace told you how he came at me with the bail hook.
That must have been a terrible experience for you.
I don't blame him. Wasn't the man I'd known all these years. Just some poor, kill-crazy animal that didn't know what he was doing.
Mike, what happened to the horses?
Mr. Jim sold them
His Palominos? When?
right after he took sick.
But why? He loved those horses. Why would he get rid of them?
Well, I guess you could ask that question about a lot of things he did. All I know is that one day Mr. Eric came to me and told me to sell them for the best price I could get.
Eric told you.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, he's been sort of running things for Mr. Jim for, well, it's over a year now. He's got full power of attorney and everything. But Mr. Jim did approve of the sale of the horses.
Mm-hmm. Mike, this ranch isn't being worked at all, is it? I mean, the bunkhouse empty, the corral overgrown. Why?
Well, mostly because the men we had left after what Mr. Jim did to me.
And you couldn't hire others.
Greenhorns and waddies, maybe, but none worth their salt. You've got a spread of your own, Miss Barkley. You know how it is. Place gets a bad name for something, and the good men just...
Good night, Mike.
Good night, Miss Barkley.
We weren't expecting to see you this morning.
Good morning. I thought I'd come out and drive you into town to catch a stage.
Well, that was very thoughtful of you, but you needn't have bothered. Mike would have taken us.
Well, as a matter of fact, I had to come out anyway. I'm afraid I've got some rather disappointing news for you.
Oh?
Dr. Morley was called over to Wall River on an emergency.
Then he won't be here this morning.
I'm afraid not. At least not before you have to leave. He asked me to apologize for him.
Is that all he said?
No. He told me to tell you that he couldn't permit you to see Jim unless he was present. Look, I'm not sure I agree with him. But if he feels that way, well, I'm afraid that's the way it's going to have to be.
Did he say when he would be here?
No.
This afternoon, perhaps?
Well, he didn't say. I just don't know.
Well, there's nothing for us to do but wait and see.
But your stage leave...
We won't be taking it.
Now, what about the wedding? Won't you miss it?
Well, there's a 7 o'clock train tonight out of Parkersburg, and that will get us into San Francisco in plenty of time. As a matter of fact, this whole thing may work out much better. It will give me a chance to go into town and see some friends I haven't seen for a long time. Would you like to come with me, Audra?
No, thank you. I'll stay here.
Well, then I guess I better be getting back to town. Look, I can come back and drive you to Parkersburg if you like.
Oh, no. Mike will take us.
Well, then I'll say goodbye again.
Eric, before you go, I'd like to ask you a question. Why did you sell Jim's Palominos?
Why? Because Jim told me to.
That was after he became ill.
Yes.
Well, surely you're not letting him run his own affairs in his condition, are you?
Oh, of course not. But in a case like this, what difference did it make? You see, the horses didn't mean anything to Jim anymore. 5 minutes after he told me to sell them, he couldn't remember that he had ever owned them.
But you went ahead and sold them anyway, hmm?
Mrs. Barkley, those Palominos were expensive to keep. And with the ranch not working, with everything going out and nothing coming in, I didn't feel that I could afford to be sentimental about a bunch of horses.
Well, I suppose you're right. But I wish I had known about the situation here. I would have bought those horses. I know how much they meant to Jim. And we Barclays, well, we put great store in sentiment.
I'll remember that the next time. Bye, Mrs. Barkley.